schedule, the Allies were able to adopt new defensive positions, not leave any supplies behind, and the entire 1st Panzer Division would run out of fuel. The weather would break, Allied planes would take the sky, they would attack, and the entire 1st Panzer Division would never cross the river. The Iron Arm Platoon and 4 forward observers quite literally blunted the spear of the entire German offensive. 22 men stood in the pocket and stuffed the largest blitz the world has ever seen at the line of scrimmage. These 22 men may be responsible for changing the entire outcome of World War II, and at this point in time, nobody really knew anything about it. Some of the military historians knew that something happened over there, but nobody knew what happened, and it's because Booth and all of his men got captured after the war. There were no after-action reports. They never got around to filling out all those papers. They just got sent to the hospital, got patched up, and got sent home. Nobody knew what actually happened. So Booth, 20 years after the fact, writes into his old commanding officer, and then a couple months later, he never hears anything back, but a silver star just shows up in the mail, only for him. And it's not really what he's looking for, because he figures the rest of his men probably feel the same way he did. They trained just as hard as he did. They went out, they got the same fight, and they ended up getting caught too. They probably feel just like he does, and he wants to make sure that he gets them the recognition. He wants to be the good leader to his men that he never had. For years, he writes letters and petitions and does interviews and talks to journalists about what his men did that day. And for years, nothing really happens. And years turned into decades. And after 2 more decades, he finally breaks through. And in 1981, his men get the recognition they deserve. The Iron Arm Platoon would retroactively be awarded 4 Distinguished Service Crosses, 5 Silver Stars, and 10 Bronze Stars with V device. And the entire platoon would be awarded the Presidential Unit Citation. If you don't know, a Presidential Unit Citation is the highest award a unit can receive, and it's usually given out to companies or battalions for major battles or something huge. It's very strange for an element as small as a platoon to be given this award. In fact, they were the only platoon of World War II to be given the Presidential Unit Citation. And with that, they became the most decorated platoon of World War II. Thank you for watching. The best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefoulnutrition.com. Quack bang, out. It's pretty wild those guys changed the entire course of world history and didn't even know until 20 years after the fact. I don't know. Maybe there's a message or something.
War Thunder now. Join millions of players across the globe in massive battles on tanks, aircraft, and helicopters in the most extensive... May 1780. The War of Independence now enters its 4th year, longer than anyone had imagined. Battle after battle has failed to bring either side closer to winning. In the North, where the revolution began, the war has ground to a deadlock. But in the South, the fighting has just begun. With their victory in Charleston, South Carolina, the British set grander sights toward establishing authority across all the southern colonies. The colonies here would be a handsome prize for King George. It is a land rich in lucrative crops like tobacco and rice, and by all accounts, full of colonists loyal to the crown. The British expect to find little resistance. Here, at last, they would find colonists loyal to the king and eager to embrace the British Empire, especially for its protection and trade.
By moving south, they were moving to an area where they hoped that they could finally restore British authority and put the loyalists in charge. The goal was always to try to isolate the rebellion. The assumption was that most colonists, given the chance, would be loyalists.
For 4 years, the British have tried to find those colonists loyal to the Crown. For 4 years, they have encountered an America deeply divided. But now, down south, they believe they have their strongest foothold. The South needs England, and England needs the South. They will drive their strategy toward the backcountry. Into this frontier, the British sent one of their most effective and ambitious officers, Colonel Bannister Tarleton. He is destined to become a household name in the South, only it will not be for bravery, but for brutality.
Tarleton is known for his daring, for moving his cavalry quickly, the troops, quick hits. He's also known for no restraint. He's a little bit of a dandy, which was appropriate for that era, but he fights like a Tasmanian devil.
The British will not only raise and train a loyalist militia to keep peace in the South, they will hunt down rebels and destroy them. No one is better suited to that task than Tarleton. 100 miles from the coast, he closes in on the remains of the Continental Army in retreat from their defeat at Charleston. With great speed and agility, Tarleton's British cavalry catches up to a regiment of 350 Continentals under the command of Colonel Abraham Buford. He pursues them to a town called Waxhaws. Tarleton sends Buford a deadly threat.
You are now encompassed by a corps of 700 light troops on horseback. Half of that number are light infantry with cannon, the rest cavalry. Bannister Tarleton, British officer.
It's a bluff. Tarleton has no more than 200 men, but they are his best soldiers, well trained in the bayonet and saber. Buford, sure that he has the greater numbers, doesn't back down.
Sir, I reject your proposals. I shall defend myself until the last extremity. Colonel Abraham Buford.
Buford's words will prove prophetic. The Americans are able to fire just a few volleys before they are overrun. But Tarleton doesn't stop there. As the rebels raise the white flag of surrender, he continues a ferocious attack, cutting down enemy soldiers even as they lay down their arms.
Were you recently injured in a car accident? Look at this check for $160,000. If you're looking to get money you owed for an injury, I would...
It will soon be remembered as the Waxhaws Massacre.
Our captain attempted to defend his head with his left arm until the arm was hacked off. His head was then laid open to the eyes. Continental soldier.
Waxhaws is a painful loss for the Americans. But they will turn their defeat into another kind of victory on the propaganda front.
The Battle of the Waxhaws is used by patriot propagandists to depict the British as monsters who will massacre their soldiers in a dishonorable fashion and ride roughshod over the countryside. Any occupying force trying to subdue a rebellion on the home soil of an insurgency is going to operate at a disadvantage when it comes to the propaganda war.
Waxhaws will be remembered and used as a battle cry against the British. It sets the tone for the divisive war coming in the backcountry. Bannister Tarleton receives a reprimand from his superiors, but they do little else to rein him in. The man now known as Bloody Bear continues deeper into the backcountry, where the British are about to dig themselves an even bigger hole.
His ass back. You don't kill him, but he kills the whole
In an
fucking
effort to
squad.
shore up loyalty and frighten
He
would-be
ran.
rebels, the British issue an ultimatum to Southerners.
All persons who shall neglect to return their allegiance to His Majesty's government will be considered as enemies and rebels, and treated accordingly.
In most parts of the country, in most years of the Revolution, people had been able to stay out of the way, at least partially. But now it was do or die.
The Severe Proclamation is the work of Sir Henry Clinton, the overall commander of the British forces in America. Clinton should have known better. Back in 1776, the British issued nearly the same document in New Jersey, banking on strong loyalist sentiment. It backfired then, and it will backfire now.
The verity here, if there is one, is if you're going to push someone off of the fence, you ought to be pretty certain which side of the fence they're going to fall on.
Now everyone must choose, for or against, loyalist or patriot. Old rivalries and fresh wounds inform their choices. The British have created a tempest in a teapot. The loyalists who do come out to join the fight for the king do so for their own agendas. And they will soon be met by an equal force, equal in number and violence, of patriots. A hornet's nest is stirred in the South, unleashing a fight that looks less like a revolution and more like a civil war. The British Army now moves deeper into the Carolina backcountry. Having declared, in a misguided proclamation, anyone not a friend an enemy, they intend to back up their words with force. But resistance is deeper than they think. Late June 1780. British Commander Sir Henry Clinton has lived in Charleston for a month now, and can sense trouble brewing in the wilderness. His response? Leave for New York and turn the Southern Command over to another officer. London, England. The man who will replace Clinton is no stranger to the American War. General Charles Cornwallis will soon return to the colonies, but a changed man. He has been in England to bury his beloved wife. Now, with her passing, Cornwallis can think only of escaping his memories, going back to the one place he hopes will be a tonic for his grief.
He is devastated. And like many men, throws himself back into his work. In Cornwallis's case, it was the work of fighting the war.
Financial. That feeling you get when you're on budget and on cloud nine. Let financial become your everyday state of mind. Tap to start your journey to a more chill financial reality. These are Ed Words of Wisdom by Edward Jones.
I've heard the controversial opinion that wind buff is better than skiing power. It could be.
Whether he wins or loses in the colonies is no longer the point.
I am now returning to America. Not with views of conquest and ambition. Nothing brilliant can be expected in that quarter. But I find England quite unsupportable to me. It has now no charms for me. I must shift the scene.
But Cornwallis will find the war in America changed too from how it had been fought up north. The British forces on the ground are moving further and further into unknown territory. A wild country made up of remote farms, simmering with rivalries. This is not the south of wealthy ports and rich rice farms. This is the south of fetid swamps, untamed frontiers. Here, loyalties are not so clear. Those who might be loyalist, like everyone in this backcountry frontier, harbor grudges the British don't understand. Decades of land disputes and old animosities carried to the New World by each successive wave of immigrants have poisoned the territory. All it takes is the presence of war to seriously stir things up. The South soon crawls with men like David Fanning. A struggling farmer, he had been robbed of everything he had 2 years back by a group claiming to be patriots. Now, with a powerful British mandate to ride under, devotes himself to vengeance. Fanning also gathers more like him. Loyalist militia swarm over the backcountry with their campaign of terror. They are less interested in the outcome of the revolution than in the chance to pillage and grab land from their patriot neighbors.
I heard the horses coming in such a curious manner, but I'd no time for thought. They were up to the house, entered with drawn swords and pistols in their hands, crying out, "Where are these rebel women?" Then they began to plunder the house of everything they thought worth taking. Eliza Wilkins.
Patriots soon joined the fray. Men like Thomas Sumter, a former Continental soldier, take up their arms to battle the Loyalists. Stirred out of what he hoped would be retirement, Sumter gets back into the fight for personal reasons too. His house had been targeted by Loyalists. For him, as with men on both sides, the cause of independence takes a back seat to payback and plundering.
In the South, it's American against American. There are entire battles fought. In fact, there are 103 different battles in South Carolina alone where there's nary a Brit in sight. This is Tory militia against Patriot militia.
Each side attempts to outdo the other in terror and brutality. Quipping, tar and feathering, and a particularly gruesome device called the spigot becomes as commonplace as revenge.
A loyalist was placed with one foot upon a sharp pin and turned around. As cruel as this punishment might seem to those who never witnessed the unrelenting cruelties of the loyalists, I viewed the punishment with no little satisfaction. Charles Gibson, Southern patriot.
When the blood started to flow, it was revenge and counter-revenge. One killing provoked a counter-killing. It really tapped into these pre-revolutionary resentments and conflicts. It's like a fire feeding itself.
It is, in short, a civil war. The entire strategy was failing for Cornwallis and the British, producing not peace and order, but chaos and retribution.
What happened to Cornwallis in the South is a long and bloody guerrilla war that had, by that time, made it extremely dangerous for anyone to reveal he was a loyalist. This was not the way warfare was supposed to be conducted, what people called the dogs of civil war. This was the way wars were fought in the southern backcountry.
Cornwallis must rethink the very premises of his campaign. Forget the Loyalists and their private wars. Attack the rebels where it counts most, the army.
Cornwallis is a man utterly devoid of self-doubt. He really becomes convinced that he can lick the remainder of the Southern Department of the Continental Army, so he engages in what's essentially a headlong rush to complete the annihilation of this force.
From his headquarters in New Jersey, General George Washington realizes he must respond. He prepares to fortify the army in the South with new troops, and more importantly, with a new commander. But the man he wants to lead the Continental Army in the South is snubbed by Congress. Instead, the Continental Congress will send their man. They turn to General Horatio Gates, the hero of Saratoga, to head up the Southern campaign. George Washington is furious. They have chosen one of his greatest rivals, and a general he considers inferior. But for now, Washington can do nothing to stop an unfolding disaster. In the Carolinas, civil order crumbles as patriots and loyalists battle each other. In July, Congress scrambles to form and equip a Southern army. At its head, against the advice of George Washington, Congress sends General Horatio Gates. Gates was the hero of Saratoga 3 years earlier when he defeated General John Burgoyne in the largest British surrender of the war. Yet there are whispers. Some say he stole credit for Saratoga from Benedict Arnold and Daniel Morgan. That he is not the great general he claims to be. Gates, ever proud, ignores the doubters and focuses on his grand ambitions.
Horatio Gates wanted to be Commander-in-Chief of the American Army, and it goes much beyond that. Whoever was the victorious leader of the revolutionaries would emerge as the leader of a new nation. There had to be a new ruler, some new kind of ruler. No one had decided what yet. I think he might have been that ambitious and that foolish.
But the challenges of the South still await him.
Gabapentin is bringing you closer to amputation. These are 3 symptoms that are signaling that you could be close to losing your foot. I'm going to show you the critical signs, why it happens, and what you can do about it. This video could save your life if you're feeling any or all of these symptoms. There's a good chance you're dealing with serious nerve pain numbness in your legs and arms, tingling in your feet and hands that can spread to your arms and legs, and a burning sensation in your feet that never eases up. This means your body is in danger. And the crazy thing is, you go to the doctor and they just give you pills for each of these symptoms. Before you know it, it's too late and you're at serious risk of losing mobility. But these are just signs, and the good news is, you can do something about it today. A Nobel Prize-winning nerve specialist recently proved that the true cause of nerve pain is a dangerous sticky plaque, clogging, overloading, and poisoning your nerves. This plaque is causing all the tingling, burning, and painful cramps that are driving you crazy. Left untreated, doctors warn this nasty substance could cause a real loss of sensation in your limbs. Even worse, this nerve damage will continue to worsen uncontrollably, leading to the very real risk of amputation and total dependence on others. But it's not all doom and gloom. Because this same Nobel Prize-winning nerve specialist unveiled a simple 30-second ritual. A ritual that clears out all that sticky plaque, regenerates your nerves, and eliminates your numbness, burning and tingling in mere days. All without drugs, exercise, ointments, light therapy machines, special diets, or any run-of-the-mill supplements. And get this, you don't even have to completely swear off sugar. Even 70-year-old patients who have suffered from severe nerve pain for over 7 years are now living pain-free. Without the constant burning, tingling, or the risk of losing their mobility. So, if you've had enough of all the debilitating pain and you'd like to finally find relief, I encourage you to stop whatever you're doing and click the button below right now to watch a free, informative presentation that will show you how to naturally eliminate nerve pain, which means you'll no longer need to visit a doctor or spend thousands of dollars. In fact, this is something you can easily do from home. Over 62,300 people of various ages are already using this 30-second ritual, and they can all finally experience relief from nerve pain, even in the most persistent cases. Just imagine. No more numbness, tingling, or burning sensations. No more dealing with expensive treatments that never really help. No more living in pain and fear of losing a limb, and with it, your independence. Best of all, you'll finally be able to move freely again, without pain holding you back. Imagine spending quality time with your family, playing with your grandkids, and enjoying every moment, pain-free. You'll wake up refreshed, able to enjoy your hobbies and daily tasks without feeling drained or struggling through the day. So, if you want to experience this incredible transformation in your life, all you need to do is watch a short presentation right now. But you have to hurry up, because in a desperate move to safeguard their profits, the multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry already removed this special presentation from the internet twice. So it's uncertain how long this invaluable information will remain available. That's why you really need to click the button below before it's too late.
Gates will soon take charge of an army in a dire state. He will inherit 1,400 soldiers still reeling from the defeats at Charleston and Waxhaws. I have, says Gates, an army without strength and a military chest without money. In the barren swamplands of South Carolina, Gates's army of professional soldiers slowly starves. They are as short on provisions as they are on the will to fight. Gates does little to alleviate their conditions. His soldiers, many of whom have been in the army since the outset, turn even more bitter.
Being again disappointed, fatigued, and almost famished, their patience begin to forsake them. Their looks begin to be vindictive. Mutiny was ready to manifest itself. Colonel Williams.
But Gates will soon get relief. The Patriot militia, who have been fighting their own wars in the backcountry, now turn out to fight alongside the army. What they lack in experience, they make up for in spirit. The militia are itching to take on the British, and General Gates thinks they can. The Continental soldiers, now in the minority, are less sure. They foresee trouble.
We soldiers cannot imagine how an army consisting of more than two-thirds militia, in which had never once been exercised in arms together, could perform in the face of an enemy. Colonel Williams.
Gates will mount his campaign against Cornwallis, ready or not. Faith in his militia and in himself is at an all-time high.
Gates has still been stung by assertions that he doesn't really deserve the credit for the victory at Saratoga. He sees an opportunity to silence his critics and show them once and for all that he, in fact, is the best and most experienced American battlefield commander, and that he can beat the British, whether on the defensive or on the offensive.
Gates's chance comes sooner than he imagines. On August 16th, the two armies stumble upon each other at Camden, South Carolina. Each side hastily sets up for a battle. 5,000 British move into position, where they will meet Gates's 3,000 men. General Gates sends his militia out front, where they get their first taste of the best trained army in the world. But his audacity has caused him to make a serious tactical error, one with dire consequences. Gates places the militia on the left of his
its best units at the right of its line, which is the place of honor. From the British perspective, the British have their best regiments facing off against the weakest and most ill-prepared American regiments.
The best of the British is led by none other than bloody Van Tarleton, the butcher of Waxhaws. He now leads a fierce bayonet charge into the militia.
Can't you imagine them just standing there and watching this line of red coming at them, huzzing and presenting 18 inches of cold steel coming at them.
Fear fuels confusion on the battlefield. They are fighting a losing battle. Almost immediately, the militia panic, break, and run.
He who has never seen the effect of panic upon a multitude can have but an imperfect idea of such a thing. The best disciplined troops have been made cowards by Colonel Williams.
But they do not flee alone. Fast overtaking them is General Horatio Gates himself. The general who came south to gain glory now takes off on his horse as fast as possible, as far as it will carry him.
What began as a rather courageous venture now turns into a flight for his life, and he rides his 200 miles all the way back to Hillsborough without stopping, and becomes the butt of every mean-spirited joke in the Continental Army for the next 2 years.
Got 10? Because at Rent-A-Center, $10 pays your first week on a new agreement. Choose an item, and your first week costs only $10, all without using credit. Just use promo code 1week for 10, only at Rent-A-Center.
Forget everything you knew about war games. The large-scale action game War Thunder will bring you a storm of unforgettable experiences. Fight in the skies, assault enemy positions on the ground, or send your foes to the bottom of the ocean. All in one game. Get ready for unmatched realism, from the smallest technical details to authentic sound effects. You'll feel the heat from every explosion and the weight of every victory. Leave health bars behind. In War Thunder, each shell can be decisive, and one shot can change the course of an entire battle. Fight in locations from all over the world, from Africa to Alaska, using military technology spanning over 100 years. From classic smokescreens to state-of-the-art thermal vision devices and active radar homing missiles. Speed, tactics, and pure adrenaline. All of this awaits you in War Thunder, where only true heroes prevail. Download War Thunder for free on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation.
I think he went into a complete panic. The situation was just too much for him. Alexander Hamilton praised him on his ride to safety. It's quite remarkable for a man of his age. To have ridden so far so fast.
The Battle of Camden scars Gates' reputation forever. It similarly tarnishes the army, and in particular, the militia. Few now believe the Patriots can hold the South, even though the future of the Revolution depends on it. The defeats at Camden and Waxhaws have decimated the Continental Southern divisions. Of the 3,000 troops who marched at Camden, over half have been killed, captured, or wounded. The majority of the Patriot militia simply disappeared back into the wilds. The South has all but fallen to the British. In New Jersey, George Washington soon receives news of the defeat at Camden. Washington feared the worst when Congress appointed Horatio Gates, and the worst has happened. Gates will face court-martial. But there is a more urgent concern. Who will now lead Washington's Southern Army?
It's after Gates's debacle at Camden that Washington is finally allowed to send the man he wants. Of course, he goes to Major General Nathaniel Greene.
I can venture to introduce this gentleman to you as a man of abilities, bravery, and coolness. George Washington.
Nathaniel Greene is Washington's most trusted subordinate. A New England patriot and fallen Quaker, Greene has proven time and time again to be one of the most brilliant commanders in the Continental Army.
Truly one of America's great generals, and nobody knows who he is. Washington says, if I'm shot in battle, if I can no longer take command, the general I want to lead is Nathaniel Greene.
Among the many qualities that recommended Nathaniel Greene to George Washington was his can-do attitude. All military commanders want subordinates that will never admit defeat, that always say they can find some way to accomplish the mission.
Greene will travel far from his native New England to take on this formidable command, only to find an army ravaged and dispirited.
I am removed from almost all my friends and connections, and have to prosecute a war with almost insurmountable difficulties. I cannot contemplate my own situation without the greatest degree of anxiety. Nathaniel Greene, Continental General.
Only 800 are deemed fit for duty. The rest, Greene reports, are literally naked, starving with cold and hunger. In letter after letter, Greene beseeches the 13 colonies for supplies and troops, to no effect. He begins to fear mutiny.
It is impracticable to preserve discipline when troops are in want of everything. Be assured that you raise men in vain unless you clothe, arm, and equip them properly for the field. Nathaniel Greene.
Greene and the Southern Army have all but been abandoned. He will attempt to supply his troops through local sources. But there is a threat more urgent than starvation. Cornwallis is on the march. Greene needs a strategy and a miracle to keep his army from total destruction. The fortune Greene needs soon arrives in the form of Colonel Daniel Morgan, one of the most courageous and unusual officers the Americans had.
Lake Effect Furniture and Mattress is now your home for
Daniel's Amish, handcrafted in the USA, customizable solid wood furniture built to last for generations.
But wait, there's more. Lake Effect is giving you 0% financing for 60 months. That's on Amish furniture, custom orders, in-stock items, whole room packages. It's your home, your way. That's the Lake Effect.
Morgan's past is cloaked in mystery, and he never speaks of it. By age 17, he appears as part of the British Army during the French and Indian War. By then, he is already a rough and scrappy boy, hardened from a backwoods frontier life. By nature, he is a fighter, and carries scars from every brawl and knockdown, including 500 lashes for punching his superior officer in his early days. From then on, Morgan becomes becomes the stuff of patriot legend.
He really is a roughneck frontiersman. Vulgar, hard-drinking, hard-fighting man. He really is the sort of stuff of fiction.
But his rise through the ranks of the Continental Army is fact, a result of his enormous talent.
Daniel Morgan would never have been made general in the British Army. Morgan moves ahead because of ability. And he's a great example of the coming meritocracy. You don't have to be born into the gentry to be an officer. If you have the ability, if you have the stick-to-itness.
By the time Morgan reaches the South, his hard-earned reputation and his role at major battles like Saratoga gains him the respect of patriots and the resentment of the enemy. No one is better suited to fighting in the rough southern lands than Morgan. With Morgan now at his side, Greene will enact one of the boldest and most irregular moves of the war. Greene will split his army.
Nathanael Greene adopts what might be considered an unconventional approach to this war. He's going to break his force. He's going to divide it into something flying columns, very mobile columns.
He knows the British Army doesn't know the territory. And he knows that since they want to draw him into a decisive battle, he can lead them through the backwoods, through the marshes, into what are ultimately indecisive conflicts that's going to spread the British Army thin.
Greene and Morgan take off on separate paths. Greene to the southeast, Morgan to the southwest. As if on cue, Cornwallis too splits his army, sending the infamous Tarleton after Morgan, while he himself pursues Greene. The four flying armies, the prey and the predators, move through some of the roughest terrain on the eastern seaboard, each following their own will to win. Cornwallis, Greene, Tarleton, and Morgan, four ambitious and gifted leaders, now engaged in a headlong chase. On the fringes of their armies, they skirmish, confirming over and over again the proximity of each other's troops. Yet Greene and Morgan, with their lighter armies, move faster, avoiding a major battle. Instead, they draw the British deeper into the backcountry, further from supply lines and reinforcements. General Cornwallis, the British commander, grows more frustrated with each mile of rough terrain. The farther Greene goes, the more intent Cornwallis becomes on catching him.
He is going to chase Nathanael Greene all around the Carolinas, trying to gain that decisive battle. Greene, knowing better than to engage Cornwallis on Cornwallis's terms, is not going to let Cornwallis catch up to him. As close as Cornwallis gets, Greene is always able to stay one small step ahead of him.
Be a little careful and tread softly, for depend on it, you have a modern Hannibal to deal with in the person of Cornwallis.
Daniel Morgan has his own nemesis to contend with, Bannister Tarleton and his ferocious regiment. Morgan knows he can't outrun them for long. Up north, far from the swamps of the South, the war for independence looks very staid. No armies engaged, nor are battles fought. Here, the British and Continentals are in an impasse. In New York City, Sir Henry Clinton, the overall commander of the British in America, whiles away his time in luxury.
There was a lot of going to dinner. He put on a lot of weight. There was a lot of inspecting the troops. All the things that a parade ground general, as they were called, would do, short of fighting.
war down south is far off. Clinton receives fewer and fewer dispatches from Cornwallis, but that doesn't concern him. At least not enough to leave New York City.
Matching. The sound you hear if your employer matches your 401k contribution. It's free money, so take advantage. Click the link for more money wisdom and words of wisdom.
Wix gives you the freedom to tell your story with a professional website that reflects who you are and what you have to offer. Customize every element of your website to meet your needs and achieve your goals. Create a unique visual experience that enhances your product and amplifies your message. Expand your website with content that pushes your business forward. Share content.
50 miles away in Hartford, Connecticut, another man with eyes on New York takes a meeting that he hopes will change the war. General George Washington hasn't seen a battle in a long while, nearly 3 years, but now his prospects may be changing. The French are in town, and Washington and his counterparts, the Marquis de Lafayette and Comte de Rochambeau, raise their glasses to a united front against the British. They toast with French wine, but it is France's navy that is on everyone's mind. 7 French warships sit in a Rhode Island harbor. Washington believes they are enough to launch an attack on New York and wrestle it back from the British. Rochambeau is more circumspect. A veteran of European wars, Rochambeau shows patience where Washington displays zeal. The French general prefers to wait for more reinforcements, much to the frustration of the Americans. Though these French ships sit idly in Newport, Rhode Island, the French have already tipped the balance of power in the war, but in less obvious ways.
From an American perspective, the French Navy has not been that significant to this point in the war. The American perspective is a little bit biased and not very complete.
In colonies and oceans all over the world, the French are taking on the British, forcing them to fight a world war from the Caribbean to Cairo to Calcutta.
The French Navy has helped extend the British Army and British Navy over a far wider expanse, indeed around the globe, when in the absence of the French Navy, the British were free to concentrate on North America. But the Americans don't quite see it this way.
Washington sees only that he must delay his goal of taking New York. The battles, for now, remain in the South. January 16th, South Carolina. Daniel Morgan can no longer avoid confronting Tarleton's forces. Now, he must prepare to fight. On the eve of their battle, Morgan visits with his troops. Out of 600 men, more than half are militia. The same untrained forces that were last seen fleeing the field at Campdudley. Morgan's challenge? Make them engage. As he faces the most grueling battle of his life, Morgan rallies these citizen soldiers.
Just hold up your head, boys. When you return to your homes, how the old folks will bless you for your gallant conduct. Daniel Morgan.
Morgan has a great rapport with his troops. He loves to joke with them, to talk with them. I think they really just find him one of the great officers they've ever served under. He tells them things like, "We'll have you home soon, boys, to kiss your girlfriends."
January 17th. On a mild winter morning, the battle takes shape on a field known as Cowpens. Here, Morgan puts into play his own new strategy, one of the most inventive of the war, and most timely.
Up to that point of the war, nobody had figured out how to use militia in a formal battlefield. They weren't trained to meet British regulars in a formal engagement. Morgan, he figures it out.
Like others before him, Morgan puts his militia out front, the first line to meet Tarleton's charging British soldiers. Only this time, he tells them to fire just 2 shots, a quick volley, and then fall back. Against the onslaught of the British charge, they do just that.
When the British see this, they think that they have earned a replay of Camden, that they have essentially caused a rout of the militia forces who are breaking from the field. They will pursue a headlong rush and find themselves facing the very well-directed volley fires of Morgan's regulars. The result is predictable for Tarleton's Legion.
Bannister Tarleton, the aggressive and ambitious young officer, drives right into Morgan's trap. The Continentals reply with alarming force. British infantry scatter and retreat. Tarleton will try to push them on again, but within an hour, the battle is lost. Tarleton has chased Morgan all across the South to end here, defeated by the rough and tumble Americans at Cowpens.
Talk about a conflict of styles. You have this very arrogant, dashing, cruel British officer, young guy, and Daniel Morgan, and they're both playing for keeps. Now, how can you not love that victory when Daniel Morgan just beats the tar out of Tarleton?
Yeah, Morgan's like 6'6".
Most
He's got 500 fucking lash marks on his back that the British whipped him.
This time it is
Walks around with no shirt on, showing
Tarleton
everybody.
who's seen fleeing the field. He will escape, soon to rejoin Cornwallis's army, thirsting for revenge.
It would have killed anybody else.
It was Morgan's whim. Morgan had outplanned, outstrategized, and outled his counterpart. He had transformed his militia army at their moment of greatest need. But it would be the backcountry brawlers' last battle. Morgan, all alone, suffered quietly from painful back ailments and rheumatism.
Why is he retiring now? He's just won this big, monumental victory. And the real question is, how was he able to fight at all during the Battle of Cowpens? It's very painful for him. And his commanding officer, Nathaniel Greene, says, "You've earned the right to go home."
Morgan, who had spent a lifetime of fighting, will now watch the war from a small farm in Virginia, from the sidelines. For Nathaniel Greene, the chase is still on. Cornwallis is closing in, and with Tarleton again by his side, they will come at Greene with everything they've got. The war in the South will go on, as bloody and vicious as ever, but the stakes are rising. From the South to the North, to across the Atlantic Ocean, everyone is asking the same question. How will this war end? And when? For everyone, time is running out on the American Revolution. January 27, 1781, New Jersey. The War for Independence drags into its 6th year. Money, spirit, and patience are flagging throughout the Army. Time is running out. Only 3 weeks into the new year, the situation reaches a crisis point. The Continental Army, exhausted and neglected, is on the verge of revolt. In no time, Washington has mutiny on his hands. His response will be determined and drastic.
Unless effectual measures are taken to place the Army upon a more satisfactory footing, its dissolution and the utter ruin of our cause will be the inevitable consequences. George Washington.
I haven't been able to take my eyes off my husband's pants since he tried this morning trip. What happened afterward was unbelievable.
I thought it would be just another quickie, but my husband went hard on me for 2 straight hours after trying a simple secret mixture. It might sound strange, but your wife or girlfriend will thank you for watching this video. Go to your kitchen, make this mixture, and try this simple 15-second trick discovered by Harvard scientists that has already helped 97,259 men be ready whenever they want. Forget about pills and cups. This easy 15-second trick will make your body stand firm in a completely natural way, all from the comfort of your home. That's because it boosts blood flow to your member by 342%. All you have to do is perform this 15-second trick right after the shower, and you'll see the magic happen. It's been used by Campdudley masters for the last 5 years to maintain their firmness, and it doesn't matter if you're 35 or 70, you'll always be ready for action and wake up with a rock-solid tool. Want to see how it works? There's a viral video going around among men that teaches the step-by-step recipe. My husband paid $97 to a big name in adult films, Johnny Sins, to access the instructional video where he shows how to prepare this trick he uses before filming. It definitely saved our relationship, so I feel it's only fair that everyone gets free access to it. So I asked my husband for the video link, and I put it right here on the blue Learn More button that should be showing on your screen now. Just click and watch. But make sure you're in a private place because the video contains some steamy scenes. And don't wait because this is restricted content and is kept under lock and key by the adult film industry. The one that starts with the letter P. They've already taken it down twice after finding out I made it available for free, so I don't know how long I can keep it up. Click now on the blue button because it could go offline in the next few hours. Tomorrow you'll wake up with your buttons being involved and your partner will end it.
By 1781, the Continental Army
Washington begs Congress for money and provisions as the only way to pacify his army. It is too little, too late. As I have used every endeavor in my power to avert the evil that has come upon us, so will I continue to exert every means to prevent an extension of the mischief, but I can neither foretell or be answerable for the issue. George Washington. Fresh unrest spreads among other camps. They too want what they believe they are owed. January 20th, 1781. Compton, New Jersey. Now 200 soldiers. Strike them down for the sake of the revolution. Mutiny must. Took place. The mutineers don't get far. But they are not the only ones who will pay a heavy price for their insubordination. Washington. This was supposed to be intense. I wanted to know if she tears. James Thatcher, the first six-pack fire. This time, the shots find their target. Punishment sends a clear message. Sedition will no longer be tolerated in the continental army. After the execution of those men, the terrible were sent to him. But they couldn't rest in his army. the south, the war continues without pause. An ongoing showdown between two determined armies. Having surprisingly beaten the British at the Battle of Cowpens, the Continentals steady themselves for revenge. The British will seek to make an all-or-nothing push to annihilate the rebel force. General Charles Cornwallis, British commander in the South, has become singular in his obsession. He will not stop until he can make the Continental Army stand and fight. Instead, the rebels keep pulling Cornwallis deeper into the background. On a cat-and-mouse chase led by his arch-rival, General Nathaniel Greene.
Cornwallis himself believes that if he can draw Nathaniel Greene into one decisive fight, if he can bring this war to one pitched battle somewhere in the South, the battle's going to be over. Greene won't give him that satisfaction.
General Nathaniel Greene knows better. He learned early on in battles like New York and Brandywine that keeping the army away from direct confrontation is paramount. Like a boxer who realizes his opponent hits harder, Greene's plan is to keep moving, to wear down and exhaust his enemy. If he can buy time, he can get reinforcements. Greene draws Cornwallis step by step farther from his lines of supply, farther from the possibility of reinforcements, farther from the point of no return. Greene has been leading a chase for months, zigzags across the South. Through swamp and forest, Cornwallis manages to stay close. Often trailing by a few hundred yards. But the Continentals are like a mirage that disappears as he draws near. The two sides regularly skirmish amongst scouting parties. But the main armies never meet. Greene's Continental force is smaller, lighter, and faster. The British, by contrast, are encumbered. They will need to take extreme measures to keep up. To lighten his load, Cornwallis orders an enormous bonfire built, onto which all the unnecessary trappings of the distinguished British Army are thrown. Wagons, tents, clothing, fine china, silver, and cask upon cask of rum.
Cornwallis is very earnest. He does not want to allow Greene to escape. He is going to do anything within his power to catch up to Greene.
In this situation, without baggage, necessaries, with zeal and bayonets only, it was resolved to follow Greene's army to the end of the world. Brigadier General Charles O'Hara.
It is a fateful decision that he will pay for later. The race picks up speed. The two armies begin to travel at an almost inhuman pace, moving as much as 40 miles in a single day. Greene now sees only one chance for survival. As Cornwallis chases him toward the Virginia border, Greene makes a daring move. He splits his army, sending one branch toward the upper Dan River, while the main army moves east, where Greene has commandeered all the boats along the crossings. Cornwallis, who dutifully follows the decoy.
And bought Greene the time he needed to move down the river to the point where the Continentals had gathered all of the boats on that river and crossed at a point that Cornwallis could not hope to cross.
Greene's plan works. He moves his entire regiment, all 2,000 men, across the dam, reaching the other side just in time. The British, realizing the ploy, rushed to the crossing, arriving just hours after the last of Greene's boats leave. Cornwallis, so close to the victory he sought, recognizes that the chase is over. The cheers from the Continentals are so loud they can be heard across the river, a taunting sound to the British. But it is genuine joy. After marching more than 200 miles in just 1 month, Greene's army can finally rest. Greene will not stay in Virginia long. He will get what he needs, new supplies and new recruits, and change his game. The hunted will become the hunter. Here in the South and beyond, the tide is about to turn. Far from the swamps of the southern colonies, another chase drags on. France, 1781, the court of Versailles. The venerable diplomat Benjamin Franklin is still in hot pursuit of France's money. Lately, it has become elusive. King Louis XVI, America's ally against the British, has given more than $100 million in direct aid to the revolution. In fact, he's going broke funding the Americans. Yet it never seems to be enough to satisfy Ben Franklin.
Franklin gets these truly amazing shopping lists from Congress. They are requisition lists for everything from thimbles and shovels and thread and drums and paintbrushes too. Oh, and by the way, 30,000 blankets and 50,000 uniforms, and a ship of the line would be nice too. Franklin's essentially constantly approaching them with his tin cup and being told, but we already gave at the office. You're being told we've already given you X. How can we possibly cough up more?
Franklin is caught between two masters. On one hand, he must convince the French that the American Revolution can still be won. On the other, he must assure Congress that French aid, the key to the war, is on its way. Some Americans, like General Washington, have reason to doubt it.
Washington was always confused and perplexed, and until the end disappointed in the French. The soldiers that they did promise didn't get here fast enough. He didn't feel that there were enough of them. He's worried about the help that the French have given him, if it's going to be in time.
Unbeknownst to Washington, his concerns are being answered. Quietly, on its own schedule and with its own agenda, the French Navy finally makes a move that will change the war. March 1781. On the eastern coast of France, a shipment is being prepared. The mighty French warship, the Ville de Paris, readies for a long voyage to the Americas. At its helm, the Admiral Francois-Joseph Paul Comte de Grasse, one of France's most talented admirals and greatest glory seekers. De Grasse's stated mission is in the Caribbean, where France's critical trading interests lie. But if the timing is right, de Grasse plans to visit North America.
Get your head cut off.
After all, this is a war against the British, a cause beloved by all French.
It's important to remember that France is in this conflict not to secure American independence. France is in this conflict to humiliate the British government, to hopefully seize some territory from Britain, and to slice off a major part of the North American empire from the British Empire.
America may be a pawn in this game between superpowers, But the rebels can still make their own luck. Their next moves will shape fresh opportunities for all sides. February 22nd, 1781. General Nathaniel Greene pushes his players into position. He readies his army, now regrouped and resupplied, to cross back into North Carolina, where he will now seek the confrontation with Cornwallis he once avoided. Crossing again over the Dan River, Greene soon draws Cornwallis back into the chase. Only this time, Greene leads the desperate British commander toward a spot favorable to the Continentals. They will take the high ground at a small junction called Guilford Courthouse. March 15th. Greene sends his army first. Cornwallis, weakened from lack of provisions, nonetheless prepares to throw all he has left at winning. Cornwallis's men soon break through Greene's militia lines. They bear down on the rest of the army with bayonets. The Continentals face the charge. The two sides fall upon each other at close quarters. A bloody melee fought hand to hand. Fearing loss, Cornwallis makes a desperate and brutal decision.
Cornwallis turns to the lieutenant in charge of artillery and orders him to fire grape right into the mass of struggling men, both Americans and British, in order to break it up.
That's a bullshit move.
The cannon cut down as many British as Americans. But it is enough to stop the rebels. Greene orders his men to retreat. He cannot and will not risk his soldiers. Cornwallis is victorious, but only by sacrificing his own men. Twice as many British die in the victory as Continentals perish in the loss. It is the kind of win that feels, ultimately, more like a defeat. The months spent chasing Greene have cost Cornwallis greatly and gained him nothing. Defeat of the rebel army is not 1 inch closer to him. He will leave the Carolinas an ambiguous victor in search of more decisive battles. But he leaves the British strategy in tatters, just at the moment the Continentals and their French allies are about to move as one. Losses in the south and stalemate in the north have left the British command in America in disarray. Worse, public confidence back home is weakening. London, England, 1781. All of Britain is tiring of this increasingly unpopular conflagration, whose costs in money and human life continue to escalate. King George and his cabinet may try to spin it differently, but they cannot change the facts. The insurgent colonies are showing no signs of submission.
The British people are saying, come on home. What's in this for us? They're wondering, how is this going to end? How is this going to play out? Or is this just going to go on forever?
The rift between those who wish to end the war fast and those who take the long view travels over the Atlantic. In America, the King's commanders will soon find themselves with opposing strategies of war. In New York, Sir Henry Clinton, the overall British commander, takes a patient view of things. It's easy for him, surrounded as he is by all the luxuries the colonies have to offer.
Clinton has 4 houses that he lives in New York. He's living pretty high on the hog, well supplied. Certainly his liquor bill is remarkably high. Found great enjoyment in the arms of Mrs. Badley, who was the wife of a British officer. I would guess it was hard for Clinton to leave New York. It was comfortable, it was loving place Mrs. Badley was.
The way Clinton conducts the war from New York, it's almost like he's waiting for events to throw him an advantage that he can then act upon. Cornwallis's instincts are to act. Cornwallis's instincts are to fight them to death.
Now, my dear friend, what is our plan? Without one, we cannot succeed. If we mean an offensive war in America, we must abandon New York and bring our whole force into Virginia. General Charles Cornwallis.
Cornwallis pushes his contest into Virginia, but he is soon cut short. Clinton, opting for defensive wars, orders him to set up a protective base along the coast.
This adventure through the South inland is not working. We need to make sure that we secure the kinds of bases, the footholds that will allow us to maintain our position in North America and fight another day.
Cornwallis has no choice but to obey his commander. He turns his army toward a small coastal village, to a place called Yorktown. Once, Yorktown was known solely as a tobacco trading port, but it will soon become a major battlefield, and for some, a place of destiny. July, the Caribbean. Francis Admiral de Grasse makes his long-awaited appearance.
The fall is hurricane season in the Americas. This is a time when, for the most part, shipping comes to a complete pause in the Caribbean. And so it's the right moment for de Grasse to leave the Caribbean and assist their allies in North America.
I am sorry to see the distress in which the American continent finds itself. You can note the desire I have to provoke a change in your favor of the situation. Admiral de Grasse.
The French Navy, thus far an absent player in the Revolution, now turns north with 28 ships, 3,000 men, and long-awaited money to pay Continental soldiers. But they also come with a catch. It will be the French, not Washington, who decide where they will land. In their view, the British are weakest in Virginia, near the Chesapeake Bay, at the small port of Yorktown.
Washington had his heart set on retaking New York, but when de Grasse says he's going to the Chesapeake, he's going to be there just for a certain time, Washington then makes really the greatest decision of his career. He knows, he seems to sense that this is the time. This is the time to strike.
It may be declared in a word that we are at the end of our tether, and that now or never our deliverance must come. George Washington.
With all he has, every soldier, every cannon, every French reinforcement, Washington moves south. The general now returns to Virginia, his beloved homeland. In search of the battle he hopes will end the war. Washington breaks his stride just once, as he rides ahead of his army on a mission of a more personal nature.
Are you thinking of selling your home soon? Then you need to hear this. Not only will we buy your house fast, but we can also pay your next month's rent, mortgage, or cover your moving costs. Our team will buy your home at...
For the first time since the beginning of the Revolution, Washington visits his home.
He goes home to Mount Vernon, and I think the whole point of the war is brought home again to him on a very personal level.
He had seen Martha only rarely, and he had grown out of touch with Mount Vernon. Now he delves into the details that a man of the house, not the general of an army, would attend to. There is the ongoing renovation of Mount Vernon, and the particulars of running a southern plantation. 6 years ago, he left them behind to take charge of a rebellion that turned into a revolution, and a revolution that turned into a world war. Now, he longs for it to be over.
This is what I'm fighting for. On one hand, and then on the other hand, it's when can I get home? I'm fighting for this, but I want to be here so much.
George Washington is not the only one who came into his own in these many years. Washington's only son, Jackie, had come of age too. Long kept out of the army by his overprotective parents, Jackie now makes a final plea to follow his father into battle. This time, Washington softens. It is a testament to Washington's confidence. With all good fortune, the end of the war is at hand. A convergence is taking shape. As Admiral de Grasse sails up toward Virginia from the Caribbean, the Continental Army, now joined by 5,000 French troops, also heads toward the Chesapeake Bay. There, General Cornwallis hastens to build his defenses at Yorktown. But he is beginning to feel that he is sitting at the center of a dangerous trap. Cornwallis raises the alarm. He writes to Clinton in New York.
Sir, if I have no hopes of relief, I would rather risk an action than defend my half-finished defenses. But if you cannot relieve me very soon, you must be prepared to hear the worst. General Charles Cornwallis.
Clinton's response? Vague promises.
Your lordship may be assured that I shall endeavor to reinforce the army under your command by all the means within my power. Sir Henry Clinton.
Cornwallis will soon find himself hanging on those promises, while Washington and the French will get their chance to fulfill the promise of alliance. For each player, the war's endgame has arrived. The Continental Army, after a year of deadlock and disloyalty, is now moving as one, en route to Yorktown and the largest offensive of the war. America, fatigued after 6 years of fighting, holds its breath. Independence, their glorious cause, feels within its grasp once more. September 5th. Admiral de Grasse and his French fleet arrive first to the Chesapeake Bay and take on the inadequate British force sent to chase him out. The two navies clash at sea for 4 days. Both fleets are badly hurt, but it is the British who must give up the bay.
They needed to drive de Grasse out of the mouth of the Chesapeake, and that they failed to do.
De Grasse, in one pivotal battle, captures control of all that comes into or out of Yorktown. General Cornwallis knows his situation is worsening. He needs more help. He needs reinforcements. His commander, Henry Clinton, has not budged from New York.
Sir Henry Clinton to Earl Cornwallis, New York. Your lordship may be assured that I am doing everything in my power to relieve you, if the winds permit and no unforeseen accident happen. This, however, is subject to disappointment. Sir Henry Clinton.
Earl Cornwallis to Sir Henry Clinton. Sir, I shall have no doubt, if relief arrives in any reasonable time, York will be in the possession of His Majesty's troops. General Charles Cornwallis.
Cornwallis, feeling magnanimous, takes faith in Clinton's tepid promises. Imprudently, he stays put. One by one, his routes of escape are cut off. De Grasse's ships inch up the York River. George Washington takes the south. French ground troops occupy the north and west. 17,000 French and Continental soldiers now surround Cornwallis. Washington presents his plan. Launch a massive frontal assault on Cornwallis. His European allies disagree.
Yorktown has now become heavily fortified. Washington will lose a lot of men in the assault. General Rochambeau, the French commander, suggests a long-range siege of cannon and mortar. Washington sees it as a better strategy. One of his great gifts as a commander was to listen to other people and often do what other people suggested, even if he was against it at first.
On October 6th, the siege begins. Trenches are dug that will, in time, envelop Yorktown, like the tightening of a noose.
Earl Cornwallis to Sir Henry Clinton. Sir, the enemy made their first parallel on the night of the 6th.
When I first started assembling this little device to make water out of thin air, my friends laughed at me. But when they saw the gallons of fresh, clean water it made every single day, they wanted to try it too.
On the evening of the 9th, their batteries opened, and have since continued firing without intermission. Against so powerful an attack, we cannot hope to make a very long resistance. General Charles Cornwallis.
A lot of a siege is about the timing. Can you force a city to surrender before the city gets reinforcements? Can you get closer and closer in your parallel trenches as you move towards the city line of defenses?
October 11th, the second parallel is dug, closing the circle around Yorktown. Still, there is no sign of Clinton's reinforcements.
October 11th, 5 p.m. Since my last letter was written, we have lost 30 men. I have only to repeat, nothing but a direct move can save me. General Charles Cornwallis.
Clinton promises support. And Clinton promises support. Clinton promises support. And Cornwallis waits for the support, waits for the support, and it doesn't arrive.
The siege daily is becoming more and more formidable. His Lordship Cornwallis must view his situation as extremely critical, if not desperate. James Thatcher, American officer.
October 14th, 8 p.m. Washington's troops close in and make a full-scale attack on the outer redoubts of the fort.
October 15th, Earl Cornwallis to Sir Henry Clinton. Sir, my situation now becomes very critical. The safety of this place is so precarious that I cannot recommend you run great risk in endeavoring to save us. General Charles Cornwallis.
Cornwallis's letter will not be read. Clinton has already set sail from New York. But the belated relief effort will not be in time. His window has closed. For 6 long years, Washington fought a war marked more by loss than victory. Now his day has come. The general's finest hour begins quietly with a lone British drummer spotted coming through the smoke.
The enemy beat a parley, and Lord Cornwallis proposed a cessation of hostilities to settle terms for the surrender of the posts. To this he was answered that a desire to spare the further effusion of blood would readily incline me to accept of the surrender, but that I wished to have it in writing. George Washington.
When he got Cornwallis's letter proposing the cessation of hostilities, his heart must have been ready to burst. Because I think he must have known, just as Cornwallis knew, that was it. This was the end.
To Sir Henry Clinton. Sir, I have the mortification to inform your excellency that I have been forced to surrender the troops under my command. I never saw this post in a very favorable light. General Charles Cornwallis.
General Henry Clinton can barely contemplate the consequences of his inaction. He had set in motion the endgame, and then sat idly while it played out. Now the Southern British Army is lost, and possibly the war itself. October 19, 1781. "7,000 redcoats lay down their arms in front of General George Washington. On this momentous occasion, only one person is missing. General Charles Cornwallis avoids the ceremony, claiming illness. No doubt he felt worse on this day than any other in his long military career.
How could this have happened? Cornwallis is so humiliated and so stricken by the defeat that he cannot surrender in person to George Washington.
October 27th. Cornwallis and Washington will meet a week later when Cornwallis, in a show of respect, invites Washington to his headquarters. What the two men discuss is not recorded. But surely they must have shared the same thought. Now they come together as equals, as the commanders from two nations, one ancient and powerful, the other on the verge of being born.
For the Americans, certainly their euphoric feelings of victory. Now, though, the more difficult task of building a nation begins.
Washington, the general, is about to exit the stage to make way for Washington, the statesman and nation builder. A challenge he cannot yet concede. But before he can look to the future, Washington is pulled back into the present. Victory has come at a terrible price, a personal tragedy that will forever scar the general. During the siege, Washington's son, Jackie, who finally came to fight alongside his father, falls ill to a devastating camp fever. Washington and Martha arrive in time to see their son alive, but only briefly. Jackie soon dies, at the very last, a victim of America's crusade at Yorktown.
At the same time, the country is celebrating jubilation through all the colonies at the victory of Yorktown. The commander-in-chief who brought them that victory is mourning, deep in grief, over the death of his son and his final child. Georgia Parker now lost all her children.
It is the final, ultimate sacrifice for the Virginia farmer who stepped up to lead his fledgling country. At last, it seems the revolution is coming to an end. But Washington, like the thousands of Americans who fought and died alongside him, must wonder at the extraordinary cost of independence. October 1781. Tench Tillman, George Washington's aide, rides non-stop for 4 days and nights to bring glorious news from Yorktown, Virginia to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia. The Americans have decimated Britain's Southern Army and forced the surrender of its best general, Charles Cornwallis.
This was a huge victory. Over 7,000 people taken prisoner. There are great celebrations, illuminations, you call them, fireworks, ringing of bells, and so on.
But the joy in Philadelphia is anything but unanimous. Loyalists face a different kind of illumination.
You would not have imagined this house to be illuminated last night, but it was. A mob surrounded it, broke the shutters and the glass of the windows, and were coming in. It was the most alarming scene I ever remember. Anna Raw, Loyalist daughter.
Paris, November 19th. A month later, as fast as 18th century news can travel, a midnight message is delivered to Benjamin Franklin with the news of Yorktown. Franklin has been in France for 5 years to secure and hold on to French support. At long last, victory and peace may be at hand. London, 6 days later. Ironically, the British are the last to know. Prime Minister Lord Campdudley gets the dreadful news by way of a French source. My God, he cries, it's all over. The news stuns him. The last anyone had heard, Cornwallis, one of Britain's most able generals, had marched his army from Charleston to Virginia uncontested. There's been no warning. Such a profound defeat is impossible.
Capture of Cornwallis comes as a drastic shock. Britain's not supposed to lose. It's not supposed to lose to its own people, to its own colonists.
King George III has no intention of surrendering any part of his empire. He prepares a speech to steel the spine of Parliament.
The late misfortune calls loudly for your firm concurrence and assistance. I have no doubt but that by the support of my Parliament, by the valor of my fleets and armies, and by a united exertion of my people, I shall be enabled to restore the blessing of a safe, honorable peace to all my dominions. King George III.
In New York, Britain's man in charge of the American war is still General Henry Clinton.
What happens to your skin when you soak in baking soda? Do you know what happens when you drink a teaspoon of baking soda? For more natural ways to stay healthy, keep watching.
Amazing benefits and uses of baking soda. I use it as a doctor for some remedies that will surprise you. The most common use that I recommend this for is alkalizing the body here in the middle of a gout or an acid level attack digestive system or in your joints very inflamed. Using a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of baking soda in water, simply drinking it is a very quick way to sweep back over being more alkaline. You see a lot of people suffering and giving them quick relief. Baking soda absorbs heavy metals, whether it's in our water, whether it's in a medication or in our food. How do we keep mercury and lead and these types of heavy metals out of our system, get them out of our body? Drinking some baking soda would be a quick way to absorb some of those. It's also an excellent facial scrub and exfoliant that is cheap and easy to help with excess skin on the face. Pumpkin seeds, almonds, spinach, dark chocolate, avocados. These are baseline foods that need to be in your kitchen right now. 13 foods that are absolutely crucial right now for boosting the immune system. We're going top to bottom, moving fast. I'll answer questions. Stay to the end. I'll show you how to get my notes. They're raw forms of notes. It's Dr. Scramble, but I think that would be helpful for you. By the way, if you grab the book, you can click the link in the description. I will send you this for free. This breaks down how to implement a lot of what I'm talking about today. Let's get some people on, and let's show them 13 foods, 7 of them, powerhouses, 6 of them, making you sick. What are they? Right in your kitchen, avoiding them, executing on this, and actually eating clean. How do we set you up for success? If we want health, we got to actually build it. This is the way we're going to do it. Yes, the stubborn one that doesn't want to change their eating, you just keep putting it in front of them. So you never know how far reaching this thing will go. And if you need the book, click the link. We want 10,000 of them. We're sending them out for free right now. So research out of Germany found that the fermented foods boost your immune system. How? The animal has 2 receptors inside of its cells. You as a human have 3. That 3rd receptor they found fermented foods attaches to. It's a protein that activates it, and that surges your immune system to begin to help it to fight. It also reduces inflammation, so you should be totally focused on reducing inflammation right now and surging that immune system while you do it. But for you to succeed at this, you've got to get good bacteria into your gut. You have more good bacteria than bad bacteria. Flavored sauerkraut's my favorite. That's a good source. You can also go for kombucha. Just watch your sugar content. It's also a good source of vitamin K2, which most people are super deficient on. I think yogurt's a poor source of fermented foods and probiotics. Stay away from the dairy. You're going to find out more why later. Number 2, magnesium. 80% of all the chemical reactions in your body run off magnesium. It's the supercharger running the batteries. It's the calcium channel blocker. Now this is important because too much calcium in your system, which I think would grossly overtake. Calcium actually locks things up, causes oxidative stress, and it starts to calcify things. That's oxidative stress. You want that reduced as much as possible, yeah? Magnesium is your best component to do that. If you have migraines, you more than likely have magnesium deficiency. Kale, broccoli, Brussels, lemon, strawberries, oranges. That's a powerful list. Fermented foods, magnesium, vitamin C, then we go zinc. Zinc has been shown to be treating the virus. You get it in your system beforehand, you got a lot better way to fend that off. To understand how to eat this way, to understand a food list, you can look at all the foods. If you want the book, there's a link in the description. What my wife and I did, we just bought 10,000 of these, and we're just sending them all over the country. Just cover your shipping, and we will send it to you right now, and you'll be able to get the food list. You'll get a 21-day guide. We're going to show you how to, the 5 crucial rules to making eating really simple, and I'm going to talk more why this is so important. Hit that share button. I think a lot more people need to see this right now. Simple, practical things. We can get overcomplicated with this.
To discover how to treat the root cause of health issues, instead of just covering up the symptoms with unnecessary medications, click below to claim your free copy of Dr. Livingood's book now.
But before I get started, first, and you know this is going to be good if I have to say this. Two Navy pilots were shot down in an apparent friendly fire incident.
New Year's Day terror attack in New Orleans. Explosion outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas.
Happy freaking New Year. Wow, this past week sure has been an interesting time for the United States military, who had terrorist attack on day 1. Incredible and extremely unfortunate events have ended the year of 2024 and began the year of 2025. The USS Gettysburg shooting down one of our own aircraft and then trying to shoot down a second one. The New Orleans attack that was perpetrated by a United States Army veteran, and of course the Tesla Trump explosion caused by a U.S. Army Green Beret who is still currently serving was. Now there's a lot to break down, and I'll start off with talking about the Navy accidentally shooting down one and then almost almost a second plane, the New Orleans attacker, and then finally ending with the Green Beret who took his own life in the Tesla at Trump Towers in Vegas. And all the factual information and interviews that have come out because of it. But before I get into these three stories, quick, a word from this video's sponsor. Have you ever Googled yourself? Well, there's companies out there called data brokers that collect all that juicy little tidbits of information and they sell it to scammers, hackers, governments. That's right. The government is tracking you and seeing where you go to, which site you use, which is why I started using Laura, today's sponsor. Now, cleaning up all my information does reduce the amount of spam that I get, but it also protects me from hackers using this type of information in order to get into my social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information. With Aura, you also get credit monitoring, antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft monitoring, and insurance all in one single affordable app. That's easy. You might say, but AC, I've already got a VPN. Yeah, but do you have all of it? What's the point of locking the front door if your garage is wide open? Have all the tools. That way you can have your privacy and protect it like I value mine. Just check out Aura.com/angrycops. Click the link below and get your free 2-week trial. See the advantages for yourself. The U.S. Navy is shooting down one of its F-18 Hornets is about a week and a half old, and last week I made an emergency Angry Meat review on it, discussing some of the funny memes that came from the United States Navy shooting down one of its own planes, but some new information came, and more that I wasn't aware of, that a second plane was almost taken down, and I was given additional information from you fantastic people in the Navy that, hey, this is how that could have potentially happened, and this is who's going to be held responsible, most likely. A U.S. Navy F-18 Super Hornet took off from the carrier USS Truman that was flying around doing some refueling campaign. That Super Hornet was then shot down by the USS Gettysburg using an SM-2 rocket, which is the U.S. Navy's primary surface-to-air missile. The pilot and his co-pilot were able to safely eject 3 seconds before the missile made impact with their Super Hornet and detonated. Immediately rescue efforts were made. They were recovered, safe and sound, minor injuries. What are the minor injuries? Well, that pilot ejecting from an aircraft is an extremely violent force. Getting ejected compresses your spine. That can lead to spinal issues and your discs be compressed or bulging or exploding or getting crushed, etc. Original Houthi rebels in Yemen stated that it was their fault. They had shot down the Super Hornet, but eventually the U.S. Navy came up to correct that and said, I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man. With blue on blue, which I don't know which one is more embarrassing. The United States Navy showing the Houthis that they're lying pieces of shit, that they don't even have close to the technology that could take down one of our aircraft. The U.S. Navy proving that the Houthis couldn't do it by taking credit for accidentally shooting down one of their own aircraft. But let's not stop there, because just moments later, the USS Gettysburg fired another SM-2 rocket at a second plane that was just miles behind the original plane that they had shot down. That's right, the Hornet went down. The guys ejected. They're like, we're ejecting. Holy, we're getting incoming fire. And the USS Gettysburg's like, sweet, that thing that we shot went down. Wow, those guys are calling for help. What an odd coincidence. Hey, there's a second thing right behind the first thing. Let's shoot that down. Luckily, the pilots in that second aircraft were able to avoid being struck by the rocket. Statements are saying that it came within 100 feet of hitting the aircraft. That's pretty scary close. Although nothing concrete has come out from the Navy as to why a United States ship would shoot down one of its own craft, there are some speculations. People in the Navy with know-how are saying that the IFF might have been turned off. IFF standing for Identification Friend or Foe. And for laymen like us, there's a terminal or a responder mounted in an aircraft and in a Navy ship. They both talk to one another, challenging one another. Hey, who are you? Hey, one of your friends. Oh, okay. And then nothing happens. Now, if somebody turns that off, then one's gonna go, hey, who are you? The other one's gonna go, nothing. There's nothing there. So this turns into, oh, it's probably a bad guy. Fire away. So it allows friendly aircraft and naval vessels to see one another and not shoot each other down.
It does seem important.
The possibility, you could say, would be fairly high that somebody, the USS Gettysburg, might have turned off their IFF. That way, when they were pinging and sending out radars at that one plane, the aircraft, the Super Hornet, nothing was coming back. So they assumed that that was possibly an enemy ship, craft, missile, unmanned aerial aircraft, which the Navy had been shooting down several of those throughout the day. What leads me to believe that it was the USS Gettysburg's fault for both of these missiles being fired at, connecting with and narrowly missing two United States Navy aircraft, is that if you hit one, you go, oh, okay, cool. Maybe that aircraft didn't have their IFF on. But if you go for two, that means that correlating factor. And if both aircraft took off from the USS Truman, a carrier, in a carrier group, and then were flying around, it's hard for me to believe that somewhere in there, the USS Gettysburg made some sort of mistake. They saw them as potential threats and then fired on them. Regarding the second missile getting fired off at the second aircraft, the U.S. Navy is looking into that and trying to determine whether or not the USS Gettysburg quickly turned off its guidance systems, right, the aircraft. And to add context, this happened on the 21st of December for a large military operation where the United States Navy was bombing cruising military targets. And during that day, several unmanned aerial aircraft were shot down, as well as an anti-ship cruise missile. Still, it's not looking good for the commanding officer of the USS Gettysburg and his tactical action officer, both of which would be directly involved in firing a missile at an incoming aircraft or object. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, they say. But enough of the Navy looking stupid. How about the Army? Let's talk about the New Orleans attack. God, his name is hard. I'm just going to call him Jabbar. Jabbar, who did the New Orleans attack on January 1st, is obviously a topic of discussion, and one of those topics within that is his military service. Great. A military member committing a terrorist act. Great. Grand. Wonderful.
That's what we need.
Jabbar was active military from 2007 all the way up to 2015, and then from 2015 to 2020 he was in the reserves. He got as high as staff sergeant, but his jobs, his MOS, military occupation specialty, was a human resource specialist and an IT specialist. Far from an infantryman. Now, he did have a tour overseas in Afghanistan, but with these jobs, he'd be more on a post, assisting people in administrative tasks and technical issues on the post. But by 2022, Jabbar had been married and divorced 3 times and had several children. He was accruing a large amount of debt from child support and also from a failing business. Stressors in one's life, you might say. Family members stated that at least a year ago, Jabbar started showing signs of extremism. So let's break that down. Family and relationship dysfunction, monetary stresses. These are all things military members are told to look out for in one another for potential suicide awareness. And on top of that, regarding the training that we all get when it comes to OPSEC and making sure we don't plug random thumb drives into computers that are owned by the government, yes, foreign agitators and people that are trying to spy on us and use military members as potential methods of gaining information will see those stressors and take advantage of them. Pay for an agent that's from a non-happy or friendly country. What's that? You'll give me money to act for you? That's so nice, thank you. My personal opinion is that Jabbar ended up falling into that trap. That inability to have a consistent lifestyle and fall deeper and deeper into debt made him an easy recruit and a target for that ideology, which he lost his life over. Another thing that stands out to me is the number of crude IEDs that he had created. People don't just learn how to do that on the internet when you're an IT guy. Just because you can solder a motherboard together doesn't necessarily mean you're great with explosives. I can bet a cohort or handler is probably being looked into and might potentially be arrested down the line by the FBI or CIA, whoever's looking into this. Speaking of mental distress, let's get to the topic that probably brought you here, the Vegas Tesla truck bombing. What started off as a story with a lot of questions, especially because it followed the New Orleans attack like that, has blown up, especially because of some internet sleuths and recent interviews that have happened over social media. Primarily Sam from the Instagram account Terminal CWO going on Sean Ryan's podcast and discussing an email that he received from Matt, the guy in the Tesla, and the contents of that email, an email he sent the day before he got to Vegas and self-detonated. So let's talk about before the explosion so I can bring you up to speed on what we currently know about Matt Livelsberger. Matt started out as a Green Beret back in 2006, was active component, went to the Guard, went to the Reserve, and went right back to the active component to be a Special Forces guy, working on a 1st Battalion 10th Special Forces group currently out of Germany. Matt had several tours overseas to Afghanistan and a couple other places. He was home on holiday block leave, hanging out with his family, back in the United States from Germany. Just prior to Christmas, Matt and his wife had a bit of a domestic dispute and split ways. The dispute potentially, I don't have a fact verifiable thing right now, but as of right now, potentially it was over someone's infidelity, and that perhaps a DNA test came back which showed that Matt wasn't the father of he and his wife's child. After the dispute with his wife, he rents a Cybertruck, he drives down from Colorado to Las Vegas. He hits numerous charging points along the way which record him, and then he ends up at Trump Tower in Las Vegas, and then the Tesla truck detonates. Post-explosion, what's recovered from the Tesla vehicle that Matt's in? Matt's military ID, several other IDs, including a passport, a burnt Desert Eagle, a burnt rifle, a burnt phone belonging to Matt, and the components of what made the vehicle explode. Gas cans, camping fuel, and a large amount of fireworks. It had also been determined that Matt had taken his own life prior to the explosion in the Cybertruck by shooting himself with the .50 caliber Desert Eagle. The body was ID'd as Matt via the documents that they found inside the vehicle and tattoos that matched previous photos of Matthew. The controversy or interest partly is that prior to the detonation of the Cybertruck, Matt had sent out numerous DMs and emails to different social media accounts and podcasts in the veteran sphere, which included Sean Ryan and Terminal CWO Sam. The longest of all these messages being sent to Sam, Terminal CWO, which I will put here and pause so that you can read. So what's it say in this email? Matt doesn't want the email released before January 1st. He's headed to the Mexican border. Why? Well, Matt says that the recent drone sightings that everybody has been seeing on the East Coast is actually China. They have gravity, propulsion, planes or aircraft. China's been using these aircraft on the East Coast for some time now, and the United States also has that technology, and they have had it for decades. These aircraft with gravity propulsion are the biggest threat to the United States' national security. He added that he's been followed by feds for about a week, and they likely won't let him cross into Mexico. However, they won't stop him because he has a massive VBIED, which stands for Vehicle-Borne Improvised Explosive Device, a car bomb. And that's objectively true. He did make a VBIT. Matt added that he's keeping his phone even though he's being tracked by said federal agency. And he also added that he was a witness to a war crime back in 2019 and that it was a cover-up by the United States government after the UN looked at it but then decided not to pursue it. He states, I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either the drones that he's now whistleblowing on or the potential war crime that he was a witness to. And the email ends to Sam with a link to Matt's personal LinkedIn so that Sam can verify who he is and his background, and then states that he just wants to get this information out there in order to stop the world from going through World War III. Now there's a ton of extra crazy rabbit holes that have splintered off of this spider web that I'm not going to go into because right now this is all about facts. Just a fact, man. Now as of this moment, the FBI has stated that a manifesto sent out by Matt is legitimate, but I have not seen specific evidence stating that the email is authentic, although there's overwhelming evidence that it is, considering that numerous podcasts and social media accounts that received messages from Matt and other burner accounts that claim to be Matt have all been posting in unison stating the same exact linear storyline. So here's my take, and take it with a grain of salt. I don't know everything. Things can change. It's Saturday, January 4th. So more information can come out. Mental stressors, potential divorce, family drama, combat overseas, PTSD, traumatic brain injuries. All of these things can come together to form the perfect storm of somebody who's not thinking rationally. Now let's say that you don't believe the long email that was sent to Sam, also known as Terminal CWO. That's fine. That's fine. But there is tons of other corroborating evidence showing that this guy, Matt, was trying to reach out to a whole bunch of different social media people, personalities, shows, in order to get a message out there. And the confirmed FBI manifesto mirrors a lot of things in the email. So, unfortunately, I think we just have a very horrible, unfortunate public suicide brought in by an episode lacking mental health, which has brought out every conspiracy theorist known to God and has turned a horrible yet easily understandable event into a spectacle. I think a guy had a rough time, decided to make a bad decision after being overly stressed, and luckily that didn't end up in more people being hurt. Holy, a couple days later and the world is imploding on itself. Pearson,
he told us that he would cut the taxes on the rich and on big corporations, and we would all of us, get
an update. Here's Ryan McBeth. He's a YouTuber, a guy that talks about the military-industrial complex, even though he doesn't believe that there is one. And he says, hey, Sam and Sean, foolish, has some harsh words for Sam and Sean. And then here's the FBI guy in Vegas saying, hey, no, we saw the email on the social medias, and no, that is real. That is 100% verified from him. So then Ryan said, I'm sorry. And everybody was calling everybody names, and Sean and Sam were defensive, and Ryan was upset because he thought what they were doing was a lie. And he made a I'm sorry video about it. And unfortunately, because, these videos take a couple days to edit, this video didn't come out fast enough for me to show my support to Sam, Terminal CWO. So let me quickly just say this about Sam. Sam takes information that he's been given by a bunch of people, sifts through it, and has to go, is this real? How can I verify it? And then puts it out for people to see. Sam doesn't do a lot of interpreting. If he does say, hey, I feel like this is real or bullshit, he says that. Hey, this is me, not what this is saying. This is how I feel about it. And separates the two. Sam and I have been in contact with each other for a couple of years. We're not like sending dick pics to one another, but we talk every once in a while when he brings up an interesting topic on social media, and I say, hey, do you have any more information for that can help me with a video? And then, of course, he hands it over because he's a great guy. I'm sorry I couldn't stand up for you earlier, Sam. Anybody questioning his integrity needs to take a step back and look at whatever they're upset about, and then most likely we'll see that Sam puts out information and will then say, hey, here this is, whether it's true or not, this is my interpretation of it. He doesn't mess with the info to make it fit some sort of narrative. So be nice to my friend, my work friend. God, it's like the whole world imploded in like 3 days. You would have thought he was Tim Kennedy. The way people were going after him. Oh, poor Tim. If you'd like to know more about how I feel on some of the specific things, then feel free to jump on Pepperbox and give us a watch over there. We're uncensored, and you always get a little bit extra in all the shows. The best way to support the channel is to buy yourself a shirt. Check out that new shirt. Oh, Teddy Roosevelt. Gather the goons, baby. The Bull Moose. Walk around, snap the raffle. Don't test Teddy. The cheapest way to support the channel is leave a comment. Tell me what you think about the aircraft. We've already talked about that. What about New Orleans guy being a freaking veteran and being absorbed into the freaking terrorism plot with Islam? And what do you think about the email with Sam, Terminal CWO, going on the Sean Ryan podcast? Do you believe some of the things that are in it? Do you think it's all horse? Do you think the guy, had a moment and then, collapsed from it? Or do you think it's the email's bullshit? No? All right. See you next time, weirdos. Shamsud bin Jabbar, the attacker of the night. Shamsud bin Jabbar. Shamsud bin Jabbar. Shamsud sits a damn. This is a hard name to say. Shamsud. God, his name is hard. I'm just going to call him Jabbar.
A new year and a new adventure with the perfect Chevy to take you anywhere. With pure power unleashed and future-forward technology, every path leads to new possibilities. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
1839, deep in the Ural Mountains, a dream mineral was discovered.
perovskite.
Ah, yes, that time a single U.S. submarine took on an entire 23-ship convoy by itself. Today we're talking about the USS Commander Lawson Red Ramage, the first submarine commander in U.S. history to earn the Medal of Honor and survive. But first, a word from our sponsor. There's no ad this week. Moving on. Ramage was born in 1909 and graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1931. After graduating from the Naval Academy, he would serve on destroyers as an engineering officer, a radio officer, and a navigator. Then in 1935, he decides that he wants to try out to be on a submarine. So he goes in, takes his physical, and fails immediately because his vision isn't good enough because he has an eye injury from when he wrestled in high school. The very second he fails that vision test, he makes a decision. He decides that he's not going to let this stop him from serving on a submarine. In a demonstration of grit and determination, he decides that he is going to take that vision test again tomorrow. And unlike this time, next time he takes this test, he's going to fucking cheat. Because if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So as he makes his way out, he instructs a couple of his friends to memorize a different line of the vision test, gets that information from them later, puts the entire thing together, memorizes the entire vision test verbatim, and shows back up the next day ready to take this test again. So he takes the vision test, gets 100%, no problem whatsoever. At this point, the optometrist, the same optometrist from yesterday, is like, I know what you're doing. So he goes over, he changes the board, and he's like, okay, now read me that one. At this point, Ramage is like, shit. But he figures, hey, we're already here, we're going to give it a shot anyway. So he covers up his bad eye first, he reads the lines the doctor tells him to read, the doctor tells him to switch eyes, and he goes, and recovers his bad eye again, reads the lines the doctor tells him to read. In the back of his head, he's like, I cannot fucking believe that this just worked. And the doctor is like, oh, hey, you passed. You must have just, like, had a bad day yesterday or something. And he's like, yeah, that was it. Anyways, now he's going to submarine warfare school. So he goes off, gets trained in submarine warfare, does great, ends up getting assigned to his first submarine, the USS SDT-9. He works there for about 8 months, then he gets rotated over to Pearl Harbor, where he is the sound and communications officer, working directly under the commander of the entire Pacific submarine fleet. And that occurred on December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked, aka the Japanese committed the biggest cardinal sin on the planet, fucking with America's boats. What's been on that boat? Nemo! Drop some lead on those motherfuckers. So obviously, all of America is extremely pissed off, but Ramage is exceptionally pissed because he was actually there at Pearl Harbor when it happened. And here's the catch with that. Right after Pearl Harbor, over half the American surface fleet was temporarily out of commission due to all the damage, meaning the only answer that America had at this point in time was a submarine fleet. To which Ramage is like, put me on a sub, I want to go get some revenge. So that's exactly what happens. He gets assigned to the USS Grenadier as a navigation officer. They go out and sink 2 Japanese ships right off the bat, and Ramage is awarded a Silver Star for his contribution. So right off the bat, Ramage is obviously doing pretty good. At this point, they decide they're going to give him his own submarine. He becomes a commander of the USS Trout. Okay, now here's the thing with being a commander of a submarine during World War II. You were only allowed to go out with the same submarine and the same crew as its commander for a total of 4 war patrols, because the leadership believed that after 4 war patrols, a commander would either become too reckless or too conservative, and they had to rotate him out. So Ramage goes through his first 3 war patrols, and they are just not going the way that he had hoped. It's not the heroic revenge that he was really looking for. After 3 war patrols, he only manages to sink 3 Japanese ships. And just to be clear, that's not for lack of trying. He goes out and finds a ton of Japanese ships and shoots an abundance of torpedoes at all of them, but every single time that he fires the American Mark 14 torpedo, it either veers off course or it hits, but then doesn't blow up. It becomes very clear to Red Ramage that he, his crew, and the USS Trout are not the problem here. It is the American Mark 14 torpedo. During their second war patrol, they actually find the Japanese battleship, the Hiroshima, and fire 5 torpedoes at it, and all 5 of them veer off course, miss, or are duds.
torpedoes. Don't get me wrong, it all works out in the end because the greatest battleship commander of all time, Admiral Willis Ching Lee, ends up sinking the Hiroshima with the USS Washington in the greatest battleship versus battleship conflict the world has ever seen. But Red Ramage is still absolutely furious that he didn't get that glory because he should have sank Hiroshima right then and there. So fast forward, Ramage and the USS Trout are on their third war patrol. They go to sink a Japanese cargo ship. They fire 2 torpedoes at it, which is absolutely enough to take out a cargo ship. Surprise, surprise, one of them is a complete dud. The other one, like, kinda half-ass explodes, but not really, damaging the ship a little bit. And Ramage is just absolutely furious with the situation altogether. At this point, he's on his third war patrol. He's only sank 2 ships so far. He is absolutely sinking this cargo ship. He doesn't care what it takes. He orders his crew to surface the USS Trout. Everybody runs out on the bridge and starts opening fire on this cargo ship with 50 caliber machine guns, anti-aircraft guns, and the 3-inch deck gun on the submarine. This is not how you're supposed to conduct submarine warfare, but also, the torpedoes are supposed to fucking explode, so whatever. So they roll up on this cargo ship, on the surface, firing at it the entire time, get within like 500 yards of it, and then shoot 2 more torpedoes at it, blowing it up and sinking it immediately. This is basically the naval equivalent of an execution. Then he finishes out the third war patrol, goes back to Pearl Harbor, in person, goes to his chain of command, and is like, look, these torpedoes are garbage. They do not work. We have to do something about this. And his chain of command tells him to his face, the torpedoes work. You just don't know how to aim. This is your fault, not ours. To which point Ramage basically just throws his arms up in the air because there's literally nothing he can do other than just do his job and keep failing because his chain of command refuses to listen to him. So that's what he does. He goes out on his 4th war patrol. On his 4th war patrol, he shoots 15 torpedoes. All 15 of them are misses and duds. And the worst part is, remember I said earlier, you only get 4 war patrols as a commander before you're labeled as too conservative or too reckless. Well, because on his 4th war patrol, Ramage didn't manage to sink any Japanese ships, he is labeled as too conservative, despite the fact that he shot almost every torpedo he had and they were all just duds. I mean, Ramage literally just did a drive-by execution with a submarine on his last war patrol, yet somehow they're going to call him too conservative, which serves to infuriate him even more because he takes it like they're basically calling him a coward. But hey, there's absolutely nothing he can do about it. So he heads back over to Pearl Harbor, then they send him all the way over to Maine, where he is to oversee the completion and commission of his new submarine, the Vallejo-class USS Parchi. So that's exactly what he does. Goes over to Maine, watches some people finish building a submarine, goes through a couple of sea trials, passes, gets it commissioned, and now he has to sail it all the way from Maine back over to Pearl Harbor before he can get back into this fight. And by the time he gets back to Pearl Harbor and gets out on his first war patrol with the USS Parchi, it is now March 1944. Okay, real quick, I need you to understand a ton has changed between early 1942, right after Pearl Harbor, when Ramage was first commanding submarines, and now mid-1944. First off, the good news, they fixed the fucking torpedoes, and those actually work now, because apparently everybody else that came after Ramage had the exact same issue, and the naval committees tried to fight it off, saying that everybody had bad aim, and eventually, due to overwhelming evidence, they were forced to accept the fact that these torpedoes actually sucked, and this is now a pretty much universally and historically accepted fact. So, Ramage was right all along about the whole torpedo thing. Now, the bad news, kind of. After the torpedoes started being way more effective, the Japanese started doing what America was doing over in the Atlantic when they were getting attacked by the German U-boats. They started having convoys of all their cargo ships that were being defended by an escort of naval ships that would fight off the submarines, and now Japan is doing that. So America copied what Germany did, and they are now sending out submarines as groups in wolf packs to hunt down these convoys together. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the majority of submarine commanders are not happy about it because they liked the idea of going out there alone, being in complete control of the situation, and having command over everything and everyone around them. And now they have 2 other submarines that they have to worry about, and each wolf pack has its own commander over the entire operation, as well as each submarine having its own commander. And the wolf pack commander is on somebody else's submarine, so one of the 3 subs in the wolf pack is going to have this weird power dynamic where there's like the overall mission boss there, but that guy's not in control of the sub, but he kind of is because he's in control of the whole operation, and it just makes the whole situation awkward. So Red and his new ship, the USS Parchi, go out on patrol, and they're with the USS Bang and the USS Tenosa, and things are already looking up. In their first patrol, the Wolfpack sinks 5 ships, and the Parchi is credited with 2 of them. The second war patrol, however, shit's going to get a little bit out of hand because Red Ramage and the USS Parch draw the short straw, and they have to have the Wolfpack commander on their submarine, creating an awkward power dynamic between Lawson, Red Ramage, the commander of the USS Parch, and the commander of the Wolfpack, Luke Parks. And they pretty much immediately get off on the wrong foot because Luke Parks shows up and is like, hey, let's call our Wolfpack Parks as pirates because I'm Luke Parks, I'm in charge, and you guys can be my pirates. It'll be great. To which Ramage is like, I'm not playing second fiddle to anybody. Hear me out. What if we call our Wolfpack the Headhunters because I'm a redhead and the other 2 submarines are the USS Hammerhead and the USS Steelhead, and Headhunters sounds way cooler than pirates. So they're already not getting along, but regardless, they get underway, they get the second war patrol kicked off, and they're going to go take the fight to the enemy. So July 30th, 1944, like 8 o'clock at night, the USS Parchi gets a radio transmission from the USS Steelhead. Hey, I found an enormous convoy of Japanese ships. We should attack them. To which Ramage is like, absolutely, I've been looking to get into a good firefight for a while now. Let's go. And he takes off full steam ahead straight towards that convoy. So originally the USS Parchi was like 30 miles away. They've been traveling at full speed for hours, like 3 hours now. They still haven't seen a single thing. Ramage wants to radio back over to the USS Steelhead, who's supposed to be tracking the convoy, and be like, hey, did they change course? What's going on? We should have intercepted them by now. Luke Parks, on the other hand, is like, no, that's not the protocol. We need to maintain radio silence and just keep going potentially the wrong way until somebody else gets a hold of us. So Ramage and Lou are button heads. They have a fight. Eventually, they end up radioing over to the USS Steelhead, and the USS Steelhead is like, yeah, they changed course hours ago, and you guys are like way off course, headed the wrong direction. So now Ramage is pissed off that he wasn't allowed to make that radio transmission a couple hours prior, and he's like, you know what, I'm just going to start giving orders, and I'm going to go over Lou Parks' head. This is my sub. I'm just going to do this. So that's exactly what he does, gets the new coordinates, takes off towards that convoy. USS Parchi finally catches up. Now, just so we're all on the same page, these are diesel-powered submarines in World War II. They travel on the surface at night, they submerge during the day, and while they're on the surface, they were significantly faster and way more maneuverable. Since it's at nighttime, they are traveling on the surface. So the USS Parchi radios over to the USS Steelhead, and they're like, hey, we're here, we can't really see anything, there's like no moonlight out on this particular night, it's just pitch black absolutely everywhere, to which the USS Steelhead is like, okay, cool, if you're close, we're going to start our attack run, and then we can just figure it out from there. So the USS Steelhead goes to engage the convoy. Now these Vallejo-class submarines have 10 torpedo tubes, 6 in the front, 4 in the back. USS Steelhead approaches, fires its 6 front torpedo tubes, does a U-turn, fires the remaining 4 out the back as it's driving away, and then goes, submerges, and leaves. It is a textbook submarine attack. You blow your load, and then you run, okay? You skeet and retreat, you ejaculate, and you evacuate. The USS Steelhead is out. They fired 10 torpedoes, all of them were hits. They sank 2 ships and damaged 1 more, and now the entire convoy is on high alert. They shoot up star clusters, flares, lighting up the entire ocean so they can see absolutely everything, and now Ramage can see them too. So Ramage is out on the bridge of his submarine with his binoculars, looking as the sky lights up from all these flares that the Japanese have just shot up, trying to find other ships. And if you don't know, the bridge is like literally outside. He's standing outside on top of this submarine with a pair of binoculars, looking at this convoy, and it is a massive convoy. It's got like 6 destroyers guarding like 17 cargo ships, and all the destroyers are peeling out, and they're coming to hunt down any other submarines that are out there. They're coming for him. At this point, Ramage is like, cool, the destroyers broke their formation, fanning out to come find him. He's going to use this opportunity to slip past them, make his way towards the cargo ships, and blow those up. So, he goes into an evasive maneuver that he calls the reverse spinner. Basically a 270-degree turn, making it appear to the destroyers as though he's running away, but he turns so tight and it's so dark out there that they lose track of him, and he actually goes right past them. Yeah, but as they're performing this super tight turn, evading the destroyers, the entire cargo ship convoy changes their course and goes towards him as well. So, when he comes out of this 270-degree turn, he is actually in the middle of this cargo ship convoy formation. He is now completely surrounded in the middle of this cargo ship formation. Nobody knows he's there, and he is literally so close to these cargo ships that he can't fire on the majority of them because they are within like 200 yards, and that's not enough time for the torpedoes to even arm. So now, this is just an unforeseen turn of events. He's so close that he can't actually hurt those ships, but the bright side, he's actually kind of being protected by the cargo ships as well, because now the destroyers aren't going to be able to penetrate through that formation to come get him. So it's a super awkward, silent moment. Nobody really knows what to do, and Ramage is like, okay, fine, I'm going to go forward, I'm going to do a U-turn, and then I'm going to fire at one of the ships from behind. So that's exactly what they do. They maneuver deeper into the formation, they get enough distance on one of the ships to be able to fire 2 torpedoes, and they fucking miss. So they are in the middle of this cargo ship formation. They have fired 2 torpedoes at one of the ships, but because they missed, nobody has any idea that they're there yet, still. Now, at this moment, one of the men on the bridge with Ramage points out, oh shit, there's 2 aircraft carriers over there, as he points to the other side of this convoy formation. And it is at this moment Ramage has to make a decision. He can take what is potentially a pretty easy win and shoot off a couple of these cargo ships that are on the fringe of this convoy formation, or he can take this opportunity, while nobody knows he's there, penetrate deeper into this formation, and potentially take out 2 aircraft carriers, which is like the #1 priority ship to take out during World War II. He decides he's going to go for it. He maneuvers a submarine further and further into this convoy formation, and as he gets closer to these aircraft carriers, he figures out they're not actually aircraft carriers, they're oil tankers, but that is still a major objective to take out. At this point, Frank Alcorn, the torpedo officer in the conning tower, is like, hey, I've been keeping track of that first ship that we missed. We're perfectly lined up on the stern side. Take a shot at it with another torpedo. Do you want to do it? Ramage is like, absolutely, take the shot. They fire a single torpedo and score their first hit of the night. Then he turns his attention back to the tanker. They fire the 4 remaining torpedoes from the front at this tanker. All 4 hit and sink the tanker immediately. At this point, all hell breaks loose as the Japanese realize that there is a submarine inside of their formation. As the cargo ships begin veering off, trying to make room for the destroyers and the destroyer escorts to penetrate the formation to be able to take out the USS Archie. And you have to remember, Ramage only has 3 torpedoes left, and they are all on his stern side, so he orders a tight U-turn as they get the ass into the submarine lined up with that second tanker, which, unbeknownst to them at the time, is actually the Uluru Maru, the flagship of the entire convoy, with the convoy commander on board. They get it lined up and fire their 3 remaining torpedoes. They have 1 miss and 2 hits, bringing that flagship to a limp, almost a complete stop, critically damaging it. And that's it. That's the end of it, right? I mean, the torpedo tubes are empty. The only thing left to do is submerge and make a clean getaway. But apparently not today. As the USS Archie comes under heavy machine gun fire with the escorts and the destroyers trying to defend the convoy, Commander Ramage decides that he's going to do some gangster shit. He orders everybody off the bridge, including his boss, Blue Parts. Just complete dad energy and go wait in the car, I'll handle this. As everybody on the bridge makes their way back down into the submarine, Ramage points out the quartermaster, you're staying with me, I need somebody to be my witness. Basically just stand in the corner and yell world star while I do this.
Even if we're from different companies, the same dream as you, with the same passion as you, we want to create something new together. We love engineers. Kyocera.
Shopping for tires used to really rub me the wrong way. That was before I went to TireRack.com. TireRack's tire decision guide made it easy to find the right tires.
It is now just Commander Ramage and his quartermaster on the bridge taking machine gun fire as Ramage orders his crew to refill the torpedo tubes, which I cannot stress to you enough is absolutely unprecedented. Literally, no one has ever tried this in combat in U.S. Navy history at this point in time. And a lot of you are probably like, well, what's the big deal with reloading a torpedo tube in the middle of combat? I mean, people reload guns in the middle of combat all the time. Yeah, they reload guns. This is not the same thing, okay? These torpedoes are 20 feet long and weigh 3,000 fucking pounds, okay? This is like 10 grown men about to give themselves hernias while they're using winches and hoists and all kinds of machinery and shit to load these gigantic explosive metal dicks into a tube to shoot at the enemy. This is not something that you want to be doing on the surface of the ocean, period, getting knocked around by the waves. But you especially don't want to be doing it in the middle of combat while you're getting shot at on the surface. And now the crew is also trying to reload these enormous torpedoes while they're performing evasive maneuvers. But somehow, they managed to get 2 torpedoes up in a matter of like 4 minutes, which I cannot stress to you enough is absolutely incredible.